Let me turn my phone off. We're live. This is fun. Let me turn my phone off. We got sound. Oh. All right, thanks for watching. Tonight we have episode 38 down here in the garage tonight of the Zones All Access, hosted by the Sports Center. And as I said, we're in the garage tonight with a neighbor and pretty good friend, and evidently a decent truck puller, Joe Flannery. Thanks for coming, Joe.
Hey, thanks for having me, Alan.
Okay, let me do some business, and I need to talk about our marketing partners. Without them, we couldn't do what we do. We have several premier partners, including Stay and Play Doggy Daycare, Whitaker Insurance Agency, Clayton Homes of Middlesbrough, Kentucky, Pizza Inn, Tazewell, Value RX Pharmacy, Tazewell, Hearthside Bank, Walker and Walker Construction, Claiborne Health and Wellness, and our communications, as always, provided by First Century Bank. So again, thank you for coming, and let's get a little background. I know you're a northerner like me, but you're way north. Where'd you grow up at?
South of Buffalo is small town, Hamburg, New York. Kind of country. I call myself a Yankee redneck. I lived there for 43 years and then actually got out of pulling and sold everything and moved to Florida. I thought that was the place to be, and spent 20 years there and retired and came back here. I guess they call me a halfbacker, but in between, and this is by far the best place I've lived. So
good to have you down here. Did you play any sports growing up?
No ball sports.
No ball sports.
Nope. My dad had put motors on things that you weren't supposed to put motors on when I was a little kid, and ended up liking that. And we didn't have much money, so I learned I had to build everything myself. So mini bikes, snowmobiles, motorcycles, a few motorcycles, not many. And then four-wheel drive trucks. I started with four-wheel drive trucks in high school, actually. When everyone had hot cars in the 70s, I started with the truck thing, I guess. It was starting to get...
Yeah, although you didn't play sports, did you have a favorite sport you loved to watch? I know it's football now.
Yeah. No, I didn't watch much sports back then. Nope.
Yeah. So you didn't have a favorite athlete or...
No, I got right into motorsport stuff, drag racing. I started going to NHRA events in the 70s.
Yeah. Did you try drag racing?
I did not.
Do you want to?
I thought I did for a long time, but not anymore.
Or wish you had it.
Yeah, no. I think I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I'd really like to try it myself.
I've made a few passes down the track on motorcycle and a couple cars here and there, miscellaneous things. But
no.
But my street motorcycle, just to try it, just to say I did it, just to try it out.
Well, you was around all these, like you said, your dad putting motors on everything. What did watching him teach you?
Oh, well, lots of motor things. I mean, basically, if you wanted something, we had to do it ourselves. We couldn't really go out and buy much. So he bought me a mini bike when I was probably 12, 13. And that was about the only thing we really bought that was new. Other than that, it was used things that always needed fixing. So I was just turning wrenches all the time.
Our best racers down here for the longest time, like you hinted at, they would take parts with the big series would come in and throw something in the garbage. They'd get it out and adapt it and put it on their car.
Right.
So it's a common theme.
Yep.
Especially back then. Tell us how you got into truck pulling.
Well, I had four-wheel drive trucks, like I said, starting in high school, and always put bigger tires on them and lift kits. And in Western New York, there were a lot of hills around, and we'd go out, for a ride, and the truck never would go up the hills because of the 70s, gutless engines and taller tires, reducing the gear ratio. So after a few of those, a friend of mine had a 72 Chevy that he ran on a farm without an air filter because it got dirty. He took it out. The engine went. So I bought it, needing an engine, and I said, I'm going to build something that'll run here. So I took a 427 Chevy and boarded it over. It was about 447 when I got done and built that. Pretty much a new engine using the used castings and some 35-inch tires on it, and it strictly just to drive around on the street with. And it was awesome. I mean, it changed my whole outlook on four-wheel drives after doing that. I could go 20 miles an hour in second gear and just punch the gas and break both back tires loose. So, and I had snowmobiles at the time, Arctic Cats, and my Arctic Cat dealer was involved in promoting the local truck and tractor pull, Tony Sassana. So he talked me into bringing the truck out and trying it, and I fought him. I did not want to do that, and I ended up going to that first event. Had no idea what gear to use. The truck had a 4-speed in it, so I went up to someone with a truck like mine and asked the guy what gear he uses, and he lied to me. He told me to use second gear in high range, and I didn't go 3 feet moving that sled the first time. Blew the clutch out of it. So that just aggravated me. So
I said, that was your street truck.
That was a street truck. Yep. So I had to get towed home about 20 miles and put a bigger, heavier clutch in it. And a month later, there was another event, and I said, I'm going to go there and see what this thing will do. And I had a first place finish there. And then, the blood starts to get warm, and you can't stop.
Did you attend tractor or truck pulling before you got in?
A few times, not a lot. They were, like close to home where you would just go out for the night. There was only 2 of them close to home, and I went to those a couple times and saw what was going on. And it didn't really, I didn't look and say, "Hey, I'm going to do that."
Yeah. So it wasn't an instant draw. I just.
It was all accidental.
It was just him asking
It was
you
all
to come
accidental.
Out.
Yeah,
that's great.
It was all. Yep.
Okay. How long did it take you to actually win an event? What we're talking, just 2 or 3 later, or next time out? How did that go?
Well, that first time when I ran good, I won something there. Didn't know what I was doing, so it didn't really click yet.
Yeah.
But I would just run local fair pulls, things like that for a couple years, and I did start winning because there's always the rule book and there's always the gray area, and my truck fell into a gray area because I had the big block in it.
Yeah.
And the engine was more stock then the guys running small blocks at the time, they all had cams and intake manifolds, and the rules specifically said you couldn't have that, where my engine was all cast iron with an RV cam in it, basically a stock engine. And so there was a lot of bickering and arguing at the events because of my truck.
How many do you estimate you won over your career?
Well, that went from stock there to a super stock, kind of a modified class for a number of years, and then they call it modified four-wheel drive. So I never added them all up. I never kept track, but there were a lot of events in those stock years. So I'm going to say I've had 100 wins because I did that for 20 years.
Yeah,
I pulled for 20 years before I basically got out of it. But
you were bit.
Yeah, I was bit.
All right. I've seen it on your wall. Let's talk about that championship trophy, not trophy, but the picture.
Yep.
The photo.
Well, I started in the late 70s, and like I said, for about 3 years it was called stock. You drove your truck on the street to the event, and then the insurance companies wouldn't insure anything stock because everyone knows there's no such thing as stock, so there was too much liability. So all the pool promoters adopted the national rule book. So we had to have all of the safety gear and everything, and then I bumped my engine up to a 505 cubic inch motor. Started doing a little more traveling, hauling the truck on a trailer. That was throughout the 80s. And then the last truck I built in 1990 and started running it in 91. The red Chevy S10 with a fiberglass body on a chrome moly tube chassis. And 91, in the 80s, I had gone into Ohio a few times to national events and just got a feel for what my equipment would do against the quote big boys.
Yeah.
But in 91, I ended up getting sponsorship from the company I worked for in Buffalo, New York, PVS Chemicals. Great guy, great owner. And I got to use my vacation time days at a time and go to these events. So I started running the national circuit in 91. And I had one win the first year. And by 1994, I think I had finally figured everything out and I thought I knew exactly what I was doing. And 94 was an awesome year. There were two national circuits, the U.S. Hot Rod Association and NTPA, the National Tractor Pullers Association. And I could run both of those with the rules. So I started the season off running both events, both circuits, and leading the points in both circuits in 94 until mid-season there was a conflict. So I had to pick one or the other. I picked the U.S. Hot Rod Association and continued leading those points. Well, actually, in 94, we ran a few indoor circuits in the wintertime. And coming out of the winter series, I was second in points. But then in the summer, I advanced in first. And I stayed in first. Like I said, 94 was just, whatever you want to call it, a whirlwind season for me. I couldn't do anything wrong. There were two events left. Bowling Green, Ohio, which is happening this weekend, which is the largest outdoor truck and tractor pull in the country. It's huge and it's very prestigious. So I had that, and then the Houston Astrodome in November for the finals that year. And I had such a big point lead in 94 that all I had to do was show up at Bowling Green and show up at Houston, and I was a national champion. Nobody could beat me. So
And you did.
yep, that was just a fantastic year.
What? Explain again what got you into series pulling.
Well, you know,
Did you really want to, or?
Well, I never really wanted to until I had that first win. And the first year was just haphazard, do a little of this, a little of that. Well, then you realize that there's points.
Yeah.
So then you go all out because you're chasing points, so you really can't miss anything.
Yeah.
So then, like in the 80s, I would run the Empire State Pullers, which was an organization that I co-founded with a couple other guys, because back then the tractor puller guys didn't really care for the truck pulling guys. The truck pulling guys were new on the scene,
yeah,
and kind of taking their limelight away.
Oh,
So we had a conflict of interest with the organization that sponsored both. And in the early 80s, we founded our own club. And so we would have probably a dozen events throughout the summer. We lived in Western New York, so the summer, you didn't really start until June or July. And, so you ran for points, and I won. They ended up in pulling, there's weight classes.
Mm-hmm.
So totally unique to all motorsports, where in every motorsport you want to be as light as possible, and in pulling, the heavier you are, the more advantage you have. So there's a maximum weight class, and you are weighed within a couple trucks ahead before you hook to the sled. You're on a scale, and everybody's watching you, so you're not making any changes, doing anything that you shouldn't do.
Yeah.
And so we would run a 5,800 pound class, and that's total weight, truck and driver, everything ready to go. 5,800 pounds and a 6,200 pound class. So in the 80s in our Western New York area, I won various. You could win the 5,800 pound or the 6,200 pound or both. I won both probably 3 years, and one or the other in there many years. Not every year, but a lot. When I left Western New York, I couldn't believe I did it, but I had a pile of trophies that would fill the back of a pickup truck, and I put them out on the road and said free, and let people take them because I didn't want to move them.
I get it. Describe the power of an engine that you used back then, and then kind of compare it to one now.
Yeah, it's a really strange feeling the first time you do that, because there's no real speed involved. You might hit, nowadays they hit 30 to 35 miles an hour would be the maximum speed going down a track. Back then it would be in the 20s.
Did they have the light and the horn on the 35 mile an hour thing?
No.
Because they do on the track. Pulling down here.
Yeah.
On some of the bigger series, they have light that goes off in a horn.
Okay. No.
Yep. None of that. Okay.
But the feel in that truck, you've still got a big block with a lot of power, and it's all geared down. You're not going fast, but you're sitting, right on top of basically the transfer case, the transmission, and an engine, when it's making power, is a whole different. If you've never experienced being in a building with a dyno, an engine dynamometer, you don't know what I'm talking about. But that feeling of all that horsepower, it's in the air, and you feel it. So when you're sitting in there, it's like I said, you don't have the speed, but there's a lot going on. The driving is.
Is it a higher torque?
Oh yeah, definitely. You want to build your engines you want torque.
Yeah.
Where drag racing engines would be more high RPM and horsepower, pulling you want top top of the mid-range RPM, up in the upper 5s and 6s is where your peak torque is. And then my engines, I always said, I don't care what the horsepower is. Let's make the most torque we can in that range, and whatever horsepower made. So
Makes sense.
no, when I started pulling, I was in the 500 horsepower area when I was driving that truck on the street with the big block. And I ended up in the championship years with a 1200 horsepower engine, 1200 and something odd. But torque would be, these are all naturally aspirated. We couldn't run any superchargers in that class. Torque would be, I think I had one of the higher torque engines at 1,030 foot-pounds of torque, naturally aspirated with, of course, we ran what they call wedge heads back then. The big block Chevy was, all through those years, even in the 90s, the big block Chevy became the dominant engine. I'm not saying you had to have that, but to win, you most likely were going to run a big block Chevy. It's like going drag racing now with a blower motor. You're going to run a Hemi because that's where all of the time is spent, all the research hours.
Okay, a couple weekends ago, you got back into the current one. Did it feel the same, or could you tell that this has more?
There's definitely a lot more power now. When I got out of it in '97, that 1200 horsepower engine, I wouldn't say it was top of the line, but up there enough to win, national championships. Now they're not running the big block Chevy anymore. It's a Sonny Leonard Hemi. They call them Chemis. It's basically a Chevy block. You can't pull his heads on a Chevy block, but it's basically a Chevrolet block with a Hemi head. It's got a 12-inch wide valve cover with the full Hemi with the spark plugs going down through the valve cover. And I had the opportunity to drive one a couple weeks ago, and it's between 400 and 500 horsepower more than what I had. So in 25 years, 25, 30 years, they've gone up 400 to 500 horsepower. It was a whole different feeling.
Okay. Talk about, you get to a track or an event and you unload. Describe what you have to do to get ready for that first pull.
You pretty much have your engine and your truck ready to go, unless you had just come from another event. The first thing you always do is go out and look at the track. You have to become a dirt reading expert when you pull. It's rather hilarious to look at, and it seems to be more the four-wheel drive class than anything else. The tractor guys that run two-wheel drive vehicles pretty much can stand and look at the track and know what they're looking at. They're spinning their tires so fast and using friction, where the four-wheel drive trucks are turning them a lot slower and have to actually hook up. And if you happen to turn the TV on and there's four-wheel drive pulling now, and before the show starts, you'll see all these guys walking around on the track with 3-foot T-handle pokers. And they walk all the way up and down the track and crossways, poking the track, looking for the hard spots so you don't get stuck in the soft dirt. So that, I credit myself with becoming a very good track reader. Like I said, a lot of guys were buying parts and buying things, and I had to build everything myself. So I probably, most of my years didn't have as much as everyone else, so I'd learn all the little intricacies of reading the track better than someone else. And because when you pull, the track is roughly 35 feet wide, and it's up to you where you want that weight transfer sled set width-wise. So they'll have an orange cone back there, and it's up to you to, when it's your turn coming up, to go set that cone,
move the cone
wherever you want it. Yep. So basically, at night you can see the clay you want a clay track is the best kind of dirt to pull on. You'll see that clay getting shiny as they use it. So you want to try to get your tires on those glazed, shiny spots.
Yeah. Is that moisture coming up?
Moisture coming up, yep. Track glazes over.
Okay. You got the sled in the right position. You pull up, you back up into it, you get hooked up. Where do we go from there?
Well, the pull is basically one. When we started out, we were running 250-foot tracks. And in case anyone doesn't know, pulling is won by the distance. They measure every pull, and who pulls it the farthest wins. The weight transfer is set when each class starts. The operator of the weight transfer, we call it the sled. The operator of the sled sets the weight box speed, the amount of weights in it. It's all set. Cannot be changed after that, so that it's fair for everyone. So 250-foot tracks were back then. Now they're 300 to 350. Some go longer than that. Some, because you used to have a full pull. You can still have full pulls, but the engines are becoming so powerful that guys don't want to have to go run them twice. So they'll pretty much set the weight transfer and say it's a floating finish line. Whoever goes the farthest wins, and they've allotted about 400 feet there. So sometimes you might be up in the 360s, 370s or more. But it's all won in the first 75 to 100 feet, because that's where that weight transfer, that sled rolls the easiest.
Right.
And even though it's a distance sport, speed is the speed is going to determine who goes the farthest. So who can get it going the fastest in that first 100 feet is going to go the farthest, because you have the momentum.
Right.
So you need to decide, we run different clutches. There's basically two types of clutches. A centrifugal clutch that's completely RPM operated with weights, some minor springs. You don't even use the clutch pedal. When the engine idles, it goes into a neutral position and you can shift in and out of gear. That's the most common type. And then they'll use a pedal, what they call a pedal clutch. It's like driving your street vehicle, only it's multiple discs, very heavy duty, safety type metals. There's no cast iron parts in there, cast aluminum. It's all higher grade materials. So you're going to determine how you're going to leave the starting line, and that you will see. It has become more refined now with time, but when I was running, you would see everything from a guy who thought he was drag racing to doing a whole shot and just blowing the tires off it and holding it wide open, to people that drive out easy, try to make the tires hook up and then get into it. Yeah. There's all different types of driving styles, and so you need to figure that out. The steering on those vehicles, there's no steering box, no mechanical steering box like all your street vehicles have. It's totally hydraulic. It's more like a forklift than anything. You have an orbital valve. They run the 12-volt hydraulic pumps because of the front tires being so wide and so much traction. The hydraulics are necessary. And then you have a two-way cylinder mounted on the front axle. And so as you're pulling out on the track, you've warmed your engine up already. You don't want to run a cold engine, so you've warmed your engine up. And that's a whole new science now, because we would start our truck up and let it run for 5 minutes. And we always ran alcohol. For fuel, alcohol was allowed. Alcohol burns a lot cooler than gasoline. So
that was one of my questions. What fuel did you use?
Yeah, you run methanol, 100% methanol. No additives were allowed. It had to be straight methanol. And it ran a lot cooler than gasoline would. So if you had to have a pull off and come back, or decided you were going to run again for some reason, you pretty much could. And then we got into whether you're going to run your engine with water and circulate with a water pump, or run it dry. And I tended to go for the dry engines after a while. Yeah, ultra high compression engines. You're talking if street vehicles 9, 10 to 1 compression, and then racing back then was considered high compression at 13 to 1. With methanol, there's no octane rating, so it's unlimited, whatever you can squeeze into it. So my engines would be 16, 17, 18 to 1 like a diesel. So back to what we're going to do to run. The engine's warmed up. You would lean it out, pull the manual fuel shut off partially back. You'd hear the RPMs increase like that you were going to run it out of fuel. You'd let it sit there and run nice and clean. Warm it up, shut it off, let the heat soak into the engine. Okay, now it's your turn. You've got your sled spotted. You're pulling out. You back up. That can be a whole different thing now because the trucks have become so light that you add all the weight out front, so it's a mechanical advantage. There's a rule book where you can put the weights. You want to build your truck as light as possible, make it all added weight. It's all out front. My last truck became so light in the rear end that a 5-year-old kid could grab the hitch and pick the rear tires off the ground. Well, now you're locked in 4-wheel drive, and steering becomes a whole different issue now. So you turn the steering wheel, and the back of the truck swings from one side to the other because the rear wheels are so light on the ground. So you're driving out, and this is a whole chore trying to figure out how to drive out, and you want to get perfectly straight so you don't have to turn backing up and then back straight into the sled. There's a person standing in the pan on the sled, waving you, backing you up, calling you back, telling you where you're holding your hand up for being centered. And you get back there. And then the procedure is you shift into neutral, take your hands off the steering wheel so they're not on any throttle controls, gears, anything. You're in neutral. You have a light in the back for neutral. They know you're in neutral. They hook the chain into your drawbar, and then there's a safety engine kill switch back there.
Right.
In case you ever break loose from that weight transfer sled, with all that power going to your tires, there's a cable. Yep, there's a cable that hooks on your truck, your tractor, and if you ever separate any distance, that cable pulls the kill switch and immediately shuts the ignition off. Or on diesel classes, that pulls the air flapper and chokes the air going into the engine to shut it off.
Nice.
So now you're hooked up. You have to have a tight chain to start with. You can't jerk it with a loose chain. So then there's a starting line flagman that motions you forward till the chain gets tight. And then there's a finish line flagman. He runs the show. So the starting line flagman motions to the finish line flagman that you're good there. There's a green light that comes on the weight transfer sled. Then you get a green flag, and you go from there. So,
is there any? I don't know, dirt racing around here, they sop their tires. They actually put grooves in them where they want them. Did you all get into that any?
Not siping, but we ended up using a tractor type bar tread, chevron tread tire, and when those tires first came out, you would just buy the tire, and it looked close to a tractor bar cleat tire, where the bar on the tire, the cleat, was just flat, just like your tractor tires are on your tractor. The cleat might be an inch and a half wide, and the surface of it is just flat. Well, then we started realizing if you took a grinder and ground the cleat of that tire, so you only had the leading edge coming in contact, it got more traction. So things evolved. Things evolved. Yep. And you would buy carbide grinding discs in coarse, medium, fine for your disc grinder, and you became now that was a nasty job, but you'd go out and you'd sharpen your tires and grind them, and it went from taking the trailing edge off, so you just had the leading edge in contact, to they were a staggered bar like your farm tractor tire would be, like a standard egg tire. And then the guys realized there was enough rubber on the other side of that cleat that you could take a grooving iron and cut across the other side where there wasn't a cleat and make a cleat. So then we became fully cleated tires. And now the tires you buy are made like that. But everyone still sharpens them, depending on what kind of dirt the track is and how much you spun your tires. You take that leading edge off. So sometimes it's every event you're out there with a grinder grinding those tires.
That's interesting.
Yep.
Let's talk about your best or favorite moment.
Well, the fall of '94 had to be the best when I won everything in the Houston Astrodome. That was the neatest thing ever. I had led the points all year. Was already the champion going in. I just had to show up there, but they ran in that Astrodome. They would have multiple tracks. They'd run monster trucks, huge crowds. It was just quite a spectacle. You're running tractors with 4 and 5 supercharged alcohol engines indoors. I mean, it was, and the monster trucks would roll over when, nowadays that seems to be the normal thing. Back then it wasn't, roll over and the promoter would just look at you and say, that'll bring them back. But yeah, '94, that was by far the most, and you go to a lot of these events all season and your family and your close friends don't go, but everybody was there. They knew, what was going on. So my mother, my sisters were all there. It was quite the thing.
That's cool. Flip it over. What's your worst?
I don't,
Oh, you have to have a bad memory. Come on.
Probably breaking down on the road. 5 or 6 hours from home.
Yeah.
You've got a big trailer. You've got all this money tied up in your equipment, and I bought. It was an odd thing. I bought a brand new 1985 diesel Ford F-350 dually, and the rear end went out on it on the interstate highway.
Oh.
Got towed off into a parking lot of where the towing yard was, and I saw what happened. And we're all mechanical. I mean, these are the rear ends we ran in our trucks for years. I could take those things apart with my eyes closed, and got the tools and the jacks out, and you could not get that thing apart. It broke in a way that it actually welded the axle into the rear end housing itself. So then you start making phone calls, and I don't like asking anyone to borrow anything. I don't even like borrowing a screwdriver from somebody if I don't absolutely have to. And so we called friends back home that had a trucking company, and he came out. Luckily, my trailer had an actual fifth wheel hitch type, like a semi truck has, and he came out with a tractor and just backed under my trailer, thing, and hauled it. Well, actually, another puller with a semi-truck with a large 45-foot flatbed trailer stopped on the way, and we loaded our trucks, my truck, onto his and went to the event. And then on the way home, we met the friend there with the semi-truck that can haul the trailer home.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was. Luckily, the truck was under warranty.
She had a worse moment for sure.
But yeah, I mean that was pretty stressful and pretty frustrating. And
if I asked you that this earlier today, asked you if you had any big engine explosions, and you said you didn't, but you had driveline problems. Talk about some of those.
That was fun.
Was it impactful? Did it scare you, or what was it like?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, some of when you had the old '72 Chevy trucks, those for a lot of years, your stock trucks, if you were to pull the floor mats out of them and you had just the basic steel floor, there's a fairly large cover, like 2 foot by 2 foot, that bolts on, that covers the transmission up, and we would leave those off. and you'd be sitting in there, and you could look down and see the ground, and you were looking right at the transmission. And I run those before they made specific gearboxes for pulling. You would just run the standard truck 4-speeds and cast iron case. And I remember going down the track one day, and most of the guys ran, what they called granny gear, low gear, and low range in the transfer case when I first started pulling, because they ran 350s. Well, I had the big block, and I found, and that's another thing in pulling, you want to turn tires as fast as you can without running out of power at the far end of the track. That also is the secret to winning, because that'll give you more speed. Well, I learned early on with that big block that I could run low range second gear, and you're stuck with one gear. You really can't, you don't shift when you run. So you're always using the same gear. So I said one time, I wonder what first gear in high range would be like compared to second gear in low range. So I put it in first gear in high range, and I'm going down the track. Well, if anybody's ever had a standard transmission part, that's the first gear in the case that loaded it. It put a lot of load in one specific place in that cast iron case that it didn't like. So I started feeling like something slipping, and there's nothing to slip in a standard transmission. So as I glanced down, all I saw was gear oil flying all over the place and chunks of metal coming out of that thing.
Any sparks?
Gears, no sparks. Gears, pieces of cast iron. It blew the case all apart. I mean,
Didn't try that again, did you?
No. I learned in a hurry what not to do there.
All right, I want to let you take a moment to thank some of the people that helped you even back then and a couple weekends ago. Thank them if you want to.
Yep. Well, number one was I started pulling in the town I grew up in, so I had my high school friends, and John Connors was my best friend back then, and I took welding in vocational school in high school. Our last 2 years of high school, we had a VOTEC. I took welding, and he took paint and body, and he was a natural. I mean, he was doing show car paint jobs when he was 18 years old. So, and he was good fabricator as well as myself. So, John Connors, he helped build all my trucks, and they always had very nice paint on them. And he did all the paint work totally. I mean, he never charged me for anything. I bought the materials, and we did some awesome stuff. I mean, I had a square body style in the 80s, and he wanted to weld the box to the cab so there was no gap.
Yeah.
And he did that and finished that off, and you could not tell. I mean, it was the only truck like that out there. And to this day, I wonder where that body in that truck went. And I sold it back in the 90s, and I don't know where it ever went. And I know if I ever saw it today, I would know it, because it's got that box and cab joined together. But yeah, John Connors did a lot of work. He'd come to my shop on weekends, and we would tinker and do all kinds of stuff. And I was doing my own engine work when I started. Back then, they had these things called books that were made of paper, and you bought all the books on how to hot rod a big block Chevy and all kinds of racing stuff, and read all that and called the cam manufacturers and got their input and all that. And then as things started getting bigger, I was at a local event, and a guy that started motorcycle racing and opened a speed shop doing motorcycle racing stuff, and then got into some round dirt track engines back then. I was having trouble, and he come up and he said, "You need a new fuel pump." And I said, who are you? And so he introduced himself and said, "I build engines, and I can tell what's going on. You need a new fuel pump." And that was $350 back in 1980, in the early 80s, and And I thought, and I sure hope this guy's right. So I spent the money and bought a fuel pump, and man, my truck just woke up. So he became a good friend over the years, started doing engine work for me, machine work. I still did a lot of the assembly work. Neither one of us had ever built a mountain motor, so we decided to get into the 600 plus cubic inches. So he ended up doing all the machine work for me, put a dyno in his shop, which of course he did other work for, but then we dynoed my engine, and we learned in one weekend, I think we learned what it took 2 years to learn on the track. That was just amazing stuff. We were doing so much stuff wrong what we thought was doing it the right way, and that dyno told us all that. So Pete Millspaw at New Tech Machine in Angola, New York, since closed up, but big help there. And then I got out of it, and I still go to some national events, and being in Tennessee here, Chapel Hill, Tennessee, the middle of July, they have a fantastic show. I won on the national circuit. That was the place I won the most at. Had a lot of good memories there, and it's only 4 hours away from us here, so I went there a couple times, and this year I ended up there, and naturally you go around and talk to some of the pullers, and there's a lot of guys that still pull that I used to compete with, and I'd go and hang out with them, and we'd talk stuff. That's been 25 years. So this year I went and talked to Jake Zering out of Indiana. Very well-known guy. I ended up, I've spoken to him before. He competed when I competed, but we never ran against each other. We ran different circuits, different classes. I got there this year, went over to my friend Joe Ader that runs Unlimited Modified Tractor, 4 blown Hemis. He's got nine national championships. That's the top of the line class in tractors. I'm good friends with him. He grew up 4 miles from where I was in Western New York. So I was going. I don't see him anymore since leaving the area. So I go and hang out with him and talk for a while. And I said to him, I've got all this stuff in my head. I drove a certain way. Nobody to this day drives like I used to drive. I developed this technique, and it worked great for me, so I naturally think it's the best thing out there. And I got there and I said, Joe, I got all this stuff in my head that I don't want to die with. I want to give to somebody. And I know all the guys that run now that used to run when I ran, they're not going to change what they're doing. They're not ever going to think of using it. So I said, I got a guy in my head that I think might be interested that tries stuff, and they call him crazy sometimes. And he says, Jake Zering. I said, that's the guy I'm thinking of. He said, go talk to Jake. So I went over and I spent both days at Chapel Hill talking to Jake. And on the second day, he said to me, next weekend we're in Brandenburg, Kentucky. Do you want to drive? I have a third truck that I'm not running. It's sitting home. Do you want to drive it? And I had to think about that for a minute. He runs the Sonny Leonard Hemis. They're still 650 cubic inch limit, but like a lot of power in those things. And I hadn't driven in 25 years.
Still nationally or
nationally. This is it's a NTPA Grand National event.
Yeah.
So I said, let me check my schedule. If I don't have plans, I'll take you up on that. So I called him Monday morning, said I'm in. He registered the truck. He signed me up as a competitor. We went over the safety equipment we were going to need, a fire suit and gloves and head socks and boots and all that equipment. And I gathered up what I had, and he said he'd provide the rest. And I drove to Brandenburg, Kentucky, and got in his truck into pits early in the day and drove it around a little bit, getting used to different different. It's a whole different feel. You'd think that they would all be the same, but it was a whole different feel. So, yep, went out. Was pretty nervous the first night. You're nervous until the chain is tight. Then it's a whole different feel. But anyway, there were 24 trucks. NTPA Grand National. It's all the best guys in the country running points out there. 24 trucks. I finished 9th the first night, and I was immediately disappointed. I still had the competition blood in me, and I wanted to win. I wanted to hit the top 3 so I could be on the podium. But after all, that was quite a feat, finishing 9th, and I beat guys that I figured are the best out there. I beat a guy from Michigan that a couple weeks earlier won the highest paying pulling event in history, $50,000 to win. He won that. I beat him. so after it sunk in there for a couple hours, I thought, yeah, this is pretty cool. Yeah, this is pretty cool. Yep.
All right. If there's a local driver that wants to try truck or tractor pulling, what advice would you give them at a national pulling level? A series.
Don't do it.
That's advice.
No. I mean, well, if they wanted to go national pulling, are you saying?
Mm-hmm.
Somebody that runs locally and then wanted to go national?
Got some experience, but wants to. Yeah.
I would say, find some place that's not too far from home where you can register and go and try it out and see what you think, because I can tell you that everybody that ever did that thought they were going to go there and make a big impression. They thought, I run all these pulling events and I'm in the top 3, top 5 all the time. I win a lot. I'm going to go and kick ass on the national event level, and because you think everybody else out there was doing the same thing, and it's a whole different ball game when you get out there. You're gonna, you may get lucky, and there's a lot of luck in pulling, based on the dirt tracks change. When you go out there and look before the class starts, and you're trying to figure that class out, you have to keep a very close eye on it, because it changes as you go. Every time somebody runs down it, they're turning up dirt. They may be making big holes at the end that you want to avoid. Dirt changes. If you're running in the afternoon when the sun is out and it's hot and dry, it's a general rule that you want to be first, because the track is going to go away, it's going to dry out. Mm-hmm. At night, if you start in dark, the moisture, or a lot of times they'll start 7 or 8 o'clock and the sun is still out, you don't want to be first then, because the track, when the sun goes down, the moisture comes up, and you want to be towards the end, generally speaking. But yeah, you got to tell people to watch those tracks. Watch what everyone else is doing, but at the same time, don't copy what they do. You have to. Everybody's piece of equipment is different, so go out there and try it and see what happens, because you're probably going to get your ass handed to you. All right. Although I sold my truck to a rookie, a guy that never competed before, in 1997, and I told him he bought it in mid-season. So he wasn't going to go run points anywhere. He had missed a few events. I said, just go with your feet wet. I'm going to tell you how to make the truck work, what to do. We won't get into driving style yet. You go out and figure it out. I had a pedal clutch in there, so it was easy to drive like a street vehicle. Go out and get used to it. And after a month, he went to Bowling Green, Ohio, to the biggest pull that there was, and which was, I had been there many years, but it seemed to be one of those things where you have a jinx, where you go there and you want to win you try too hard and you want to win more than anything because it's a prestigious event, and you never. I was lucky to finish in the top 10 there, and he went there, and I think he finished like 6th or something one time with my old truck. He beat me, but so you can do that. You can have luck, but back to the tracks changing. Your pulling position is a random draw.
Right.
Where it used to be a bingo ball type thing, they would spin and a number would pop out. Now it's done in a computer. When you register, it's all randomly done. So who's first and who's last, you don't know until everyone is registered in the class and they draw all those numbers, and then you got to hope, because then there's some luck there. Is the track going to go away? Is it going to get better? In pulling, pretty much everywhere, no matter where you go, the first puller is called the test hook. And you're supposed to, at the end of that run, you can tell the finish line flagman whether you want to keep that run or whether you want to drop and come back. Yeah. And you can drop 6 positions or you can drop to last. And there's a lot going on in your head at that point in time. So
I bet.
if you have the luxury of having pit crews and people that knows what's really going on with the vehicle, they can be positioned at the finish line, standing on the sideline, and they probably had a better read on what you just did than you did. So you may look over at them and they'll give you the thumbs up or the thumbs down to help you out there. But some guys love that first position and some guys hate it.
Yeah. Yeah, we see it a lot out here at the tractor pulls.
Yep.
Them turning them down. Last word to you, say anything you want.
Just it was an awesome, I don't want to call it a career, but I did that for 20 years, and learned a lot, taught myself a lot. It's awesome what you can teach yourself when the pressure's on, what you have to do. I was pretty much I drove the hauler. Everybody had a job or a small business, and people couldn't leave and go with you all the time. So, your competitors became your friends, and you'd get help out there. So I'd like to thank the friends I did have that decided to step up and spend a lot of time with me. John Connors, Pete Millspaw. Can't thank them enough for everything they did. And then Jake last week, 2 weeks ago there, Jake Zering, man, to step up, and he actually had to haul. You can't fit a third truck in your hauler, so he had to bring another truck and trailer and bring that truck to the event to Brandenburg and let me drive it and do all that. And was that good? That was good. That was a great thing, and that was cool. But at the same time, I'm trying to figure out, should I call him and tell him that I'm interested in driving full time again and see if he wants to get that truck out on the circuit? After not doing it for a long time, when you get back behind the wheel, it's felt good. I'm not in the position to ever build another truck in the level they're at now. Those Sonny Leonard motors are, you're looking at $100,000 for a motor. So, but I can still drive. So you never know. You may see me back out there again. I don't know.
Yeah, I hope so. Well, thanks for coming down.
Hey, thanks for having me. This is pretty cool. Pretty cool doing this.
Thank you all for watching. And once again, thanks to our marketing partners. Without them, we could not do what we do, whether it be in the garage here or out on the sports fields, in the gymnasiums. I mean, without them, we could not do what we do. So I thank them very deeply from my heart, and I appreciate you all watching. If you don't care to follow the page, share this to family and friends. And until next time, God bless.
Thanks, everyone.